Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Church Podcast, where we talk about how your church can be stronger, healthier, reach people, and build spiritual champions who live out God's kingdom across New Mexico and around the world. Welcome. We're glad you're here. And today we're continuing our conversation with Stephen Baum about associations, what they are, and how churches can be involved. Stephen, welcome back to our episode today.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be with you.
So I've got here in front of me, our listeners can't see it. I wish I could hold it in front of the microphone so they could see it. But I'm going to put a link in our podcast website under resources so you can go and find this if you're interested. But Ray Gentry wrote a book called The Baptist Association. And Ray is a practicing associational mission strategist in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And he is also the president and CEO of a group of associational leaders called the Southern Baptist Conference of Associational Leaders. But it's called this. The title is The Baptist Association, Assisting Churches and Advancing the Gospel. So assisting churches and advancing the gospel, how do associations do that?
Mm-hmm. In terms of assisting churches, so we talk about the association like it's a sort of separate organism that is headed up by some other group or what. We have at our association, we have a staff of 1.5. There's me, and I have a part-time ministry assistant who's incredibly helpful. So we don't have much of a staff, and so as an organization, it's one guy helping to coordinate work together. And that's kind of always been the idea of Baptist associations, that it's an organism that's made up, or an organization that's made up of partner churches. The association are the churches. So associations don't assist churches because a director of missions goes and does all the work in churches that need help. The initial aim, and I think the ultimate fruit of associations working together to assist churches, is that churches who have strengths and an abundance of supply or an abundance of whatever are able to help those churches that have need, that lack those things. So when there's, for instance, a church that, in our association, there's a church who has some means to put on a discipleship conference for students.
Okay, I was hoping you would share the story. Yeah, walk through this.
This started a couple of years ago, I think. And we've done it two years in a row now, and it's been really great both times. So, a youth pastor in one of our association churches wanted to put on a Disciple Now weekend for his students. At the time, his youth group was still growing. He's a youth pastor at a larger church that has some significant resources. At the time, his youth group was still smaller. Just in God's providence, the number of kids that were there was not massive. But he saw benefit in doing. In having a Disciple Now conference, a weekend discipleship conference for students, that other churches with smaller youth groups, maybe fewer resources, could also benefit from. So let's do this one thing, but invite other churches to come and be a part of that may not have the resources to do it on their own, but together we can actually have a great conference. And the first year that they did this, there were, I think, 6 or 7 churches that were represented at the Disciple Now weekend, and I think there were 75 students. That first year, God really blessed the work there. And not all the work was done by the staff at this one church. It was taken on and shared by multiple leaders. So you have youth leaders from the several churches that are coming, that are leading breakout sessions and other small group things. And so, but they're coming together for large group worship times. You have a few churches come together. You can bring in a compelling speaker or something like that, more than what you might be able to do a church on your own. But that first year, there was 22 students that either professed faith in Jesus or expressed a desire out of 75.
Which is a huge ratio.
It is a third,
yes.
Right? Either responded to the gospel for the first time, or were making a decision to follow God in vocational ministry or ministry leadership, something like that. It's crazy. This last year, in March, did the same thing again, and the attendance grew by more than half. So we went from 75 students to 122 students, and similar kinds of results, not to the same degree, not a third again, but again, more students giving their life to Christ. But you have now in that context, churches, groups of students from different churches that otherwise didn't know each other now do know each other. There's fellowship there. There's just growth, new friends in Christ, new friendships among church leaders. There's a growing camaraderie between youth leaders, recognition, hey, we're not in this alone. We have others we can draw on. So there's so many just knock-on effects to doing stuff together as an association, more than just the immediate fruit of teaching the gospel to students and seeing them respond to Jesus. There's also now new networks, new relationships that form of mutual support among people that are kind of doing the same thing and working in the same direction. That's been a great success story in our association, and I'm glad to say I had virtually nothing to do with it. That it was an idea spawned in a church that in the association office and among our board, we decided this is something worth putting some resources toward, because we see the benefit, and because other churches saw the benefit. They sent kids and resources, and the thing has really, really gotten rolling, and it's a great success story.
It is. And so this is what, when we talk about an association assisting churches in advancing the gospel, it is not just professional staff.
Right.
It is really churches helping churches carry out the Great Commission right there in their context, and that's huge. Let's list some things, just some things. You've got a list, I've got a list of things that that associations offer to those individual churches. What are some of those things?
I think the most immediate thing is collective wisdom. Even when I was pastoring a church, we had another staff pastor, very helpful deacons, others in the church that have been believers and in church for a long time. But periodically in leading a church, just come up against questions that I don't immediately have answers to. COVID was like one of those big things, right? Super disruptive event. We can make all of our decisions on our own, but there's wisdom and an abundance of counselors, Scripture tells us, and the association kind of helps to create an automatic pool of wisdom. So when pastors or churches encounter difficult questions, what do we do in this situation? There's already an immediate network, there's an immediate body of other pastors and other churches to draw on in the association to say, how do I make a wise decision here? What does wisdom say to you? And how can we help each other make good decisions in this time? I think that's probably the first and greatest benefit of associational work.
I think it is. And kind of a little piece that goes on beside that is for pastors themselves. Associations often, whether it's formally or informally, they offer pastors friendship with one another and encouragement. And so it's not always just having to have a question, but it's great to know that you have a friend out there, somebody you could just call if you needed something. And so it offers that kind of fraternity, if you will.
It does. Some of my best friends in ministry right now are pastors of other churches in our association that I would not otherwise have gotten to know had our churches not already been somehow or other affiliated with one another. If we didn't have those, if we weren't already sort of running in the same circle, so to speak. And these have been brothers that God has really blessed my life with in unexpected but very happy ways.
Yeah. And so layered then, even on top of that, is you not only have pastors mingling with other pastors, but because it's an association of churches, you have church members.
Right.
Meeting and mingling with church members of other churches.
That's right.
And they build those cross-pollinating relationships, if you will, friendships and all of that. And that strengthens the fraternity that exists. And those are really important pieces. I think that's one of the reasons, yes, it's important for a pastor to be involved with the local Baptist Association, but it is important for the church to participate with the local Baptist Association.
Very much.
As much as possible, as many people as it can, because that really strengthens these. What's something else that's on your list?
I just mentioned, network connection to other work going on in the association, like that associational Disciple Now weekend that I mentioned before. I know also of a group of 3 churches in our association who the last few years, one's a larger church, the other 2 are more recent church plants, one that's about 13 years old, and the other that's about 6 years old as a church, who, because one church is larger and has space, and the other 2 it had less space and fewer volunteers and that sort of thing, they were all able to come together and do a collective vacation Bible school, because they knew, hey, we're churches that are close enough to each other in the city that can all benefit from shared volunteers and shared momentum and, sort of critical mass of vacation Bible school and that sort of thing. We're going to do our vacation Bible school all together. All 3 of our churches, we're all going to go in, have one collective VBS for the 3 of us, and we're going to reach our community together that way. And when guests come, families that don't have churches, we'll give them information about all of our churches and let the Lord lead them to visit whichever. We're not going to fight over visitors or anything like that. We're just going to be glad they're here and help them to find a church to be a part of, whichever one of our 3 it might be. Praise God for it. And so, having an automatic network to be able to draw on to do work like that with other churches, where give another scenario, there may be a church that wants to do an after-school Bible club or some sort of tutoring program at a local school. But this was kind of the case in the church that I led for the last 11 years. We had a lot of people in our church that worked full-time jobs. And so we might have a few that were really desirous to go and be at a school after school. But many in our church, they just have jobs that they got to work until 5 o'clock, and they don't have the flexibility to get off. And they can't get off at that time, right? To go be able to do that. They're for it. They're right. They want it to happen, but it's hard to do. But that's an opportunity where a church that has a few volunteers, or a couple volunteers, but a really great idea, can work with another church in the same area that might also have just a few volunteers, but sees the value of that idea and say, this is worth doing together. We are, because we follow the same Jesus. We're believing the gospel the same way. We're going to work together to get the gospel in this school, not to build the kingdom of First Baptist, whatever corner on whatever street, but to build the kingdom of Jesus together, because we care about kids hearing the gospel. We care about families knowing that there are gospel communities in our neighborhood that care about them, their spiritual health, their personal well-being, that want them to know Jesus, that want to point them to the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. It's not about competition. It's about collective work in growing the kingdom of Jesus.
Yeah, it's huge. Okay, so not necessarily gospel ministry, but another very practical thing. One of the things that's on my list is common responsibility for helping one another. Yeah. And I have a story that always comes to mind. I'm thinking about this. When I was a pastor, in a conversation among pastors, I found out about another church that was meeting very early in the morning and limiting their services because their evaporative coolers had long ago broken down, and they had no cooling in their church whatsoever. And the conversation started about how that was affecting them. And I'm just sitting here thinking, golly, so I talked to our director of missions, and he had actually had somebody at some point who had told him, we've got guys who could go and install something if we just had something to install. Right. And I went back to my church and I talked with my deacons, and we brought it up at a business meeting. And I said, guys, we have this funding sitting here. There's another church that has no cooling. Now, we're not just sitting here in a building that's cool, but we've repaired our stuff over and over, and they don't have anything. Can we help them? And one of our men said, he said, I will get some pricing. And then we had a special business meeting, because this was going to be money outside of our budget and everything, buying 2 massive commercial-sized coolers that we had talked and could be installed. And so we bought those, and we took them out there. And that other church, the DOM, got back with those guys, and they were ready. They were still ready and willing to do that. And they went out and they installed those.
Yeah.
And it was a big day when that church was able to, instead of having to meet at the crack of dawn, to meet a little bit later and to have longer that they could be there because they had cooling in their building.
Yeah.
We didn't install air conditioning or anything. That's not what they were asking for.
Yeah.
They weren't actually asking for anything. But we did what we were able to do. Another church was able to do what they did, and we helped another church that was in need and that was struggling.
Yeah.
And that was all inside our association. Were there no association, that information would have never traveled like that.
And that's a great, I think, contemporary modern example or illustration of the same principle at play in 1 Corinthians 8 and 9, where Paul is writing to the church at Corinth, encouraging them to give a gift, financial gift, for the sake of the relief of the saints in Jerusalem who are experiencing famine. And he points to the church in Macedonia and to their generosity as they gave out of their poverty because they were so eager to help another church in need. And that Paul leans on that example to encourage the church at Corinth to do the same. It sounds like that's exactly what your church was doing. There's a recognized need in another church.
Right.
And because the gospel matters, and because people's relationship to Jesus being strengthened and edified, and because the church being equipped to do ministry matters in that place where there's that church, it matters that we help them to be able to do that in a way that is conducive to their community and helpful for the gospel. It's going to be difficult for outsiders to want to come to a church that's smoking hot at 8 a.m. because there's no cooling in the summer. That's going to be a disincentive for people to be among the body. So we're going to help ease the discomfort of a body for the sake of the gospel, and that's huge.
Yes, it is. Okay, our time is kind of running out. Let me ask this question. So, how can churches become involved in their association?
One of the most immediate ways is by attending the association's annual meeting. Our association meets annually. Other associations may meet semi-annually or even more frequently than that. But at that annual meeting, it's a fancy business meeting. It feels like a micro version of like the SBC annual meeting or a state convention meeting. But we talk about things that are going on in the life of the association, churches in need, churches without pastors that might need some assistance. We talk about budgeting for the next fiscal year and what we're going to do with that budget. What we're going to do with the gifts that churches give, which church plants we're going to support, what other ministries we're going to help to support financially and that sort of thing. But showing up at those meetings gives church members an understanding of what's going on in the association, and it also clues them into ways that they as a church can also be engaged in. So, for instance, our association financially supports a couple of church plants in our association, but we also send some support to some affiliated ministries. One is the Christian Challenge at University of New Mexico. The other is the Rock at Noonday, which is a local homeless ministry. And those two affiliate ministries are very glad to have volunteers from local churches to be a part of. The Christian Challenge is glad to have discipling and evangelism help from members of local Baptist churches. The Rock at Noonday is glad to have volunteers to help serve homeless and provide more than just food, but care and comfort and education and other resources like that. And so getting to know those ministries can start at the annual meeting. So that's the most immediate way that churches can be engaged. The other way that churches can be engaged or active in their local association is by getting to know the churches in their association that are near them. Our association is big geographically. It's greater Albuquerque metro area. We have about 75 churches in our association, but many of those churches are close to each other, relatively speaking, a couple miles apart, 3 miles apart. They serve similar communities. Churches can serve their association well by getting to know the churches that are down the road from them, by avoiding ideas of turfiness, of competition, and seeing those sister churches as co-laborers in the same field or similar field. There's enough lost people in Albuquerque for us to fill all of our churches to overflowing multiple times over. We're not fighting for
there's no need for competition.
Exactly. There's not, but there's much need for cooperation and co-laboring. And so getting to know the churches and church members that are nearby to you, and then beginning to think about how do we leverage our mutual relationship for greater gospel advancement in the place that we both live, or all three or four live and work and are trying to do stuff together.
And I hear you in talking about some of this. I mean, you were talking about the Christian Challenge on the Rock at Noonday, being happy for people to come and participate. So there's that annual meeting. It filters down to these ministry opportunities and just people in churches getting involved in the activities and the affiliated ministries of the association itself.
And I think that is the real engine room of our cooperative work. It's not my office where I come up with great ideas and then try to sell those ideas to churches and get them on board. The engine room for these great ministry opportunities is in our churches. And we just happen to have this great pool of or network or fellowship of other like-minded churches to be able to say, for one church to be able to say, hey, we've got this idea. Is anyone else interested? And come to find out, many other hands may go up. And out of that, a really fruitful and meaningful ministry in our immediate area is born out of that cooperation.
And I will say this, in my history and experience of working with my association as a pastor, when I was doing that, some of the most godly and effective people that were also in that associational leadership structure, ministry structure, whatever, were not other pastors. They were lay people from other churches.
Yeah, that's right.
And we had lay people involved, and I'm sure that some other pastors probably had that kind of experience with some of them. This is not just for pastors. Church members have a lot to contribute to this idea of cooperative ministry, fellowship, fraternity among churches, churches helping churches. Because when it really comes down to it, we talked about this at the beginning, a church is full of people and another church is full of people. And it's one full of people working with and helping another full of people.
Yep.
I mean, that's what it really is. It's all about people. Stephen, it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you so much for being part of this today. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for listening in with us as we've explored one facet of what it means to be a thriving church. I'm going to be placing that resource, the book by Ray Gentry, The Baptist Association, on our podcast website under resources. You'll be able to find information about it there. If you need that or you need to contact us, visit thrivingchurchpodcast.com and click on contact or click on resource, whatever you need. That podcast site again is thrivingchurchpodcast.com. Remember that all of our conventions, missionary staff, including our regional missionaries, are available to help answer your questions and to help your church thrive. You can reach them through that podcast site at thrivingchurchpodcast.com. Just click on contact. Until our next episode, remember that our mission is God's mission, and our power is His power. He is at work within you. Have a great Sunday this week. I'm Kevin Parker, and I look forward to our next time together on the Thriving Church Podcast.